I would say like, great day to have, good day to have a good day. And people would be like, oh, she's so naive. She's so naive. Like, oh, she's so sweet. She doesn't get it. And I'm like, no, I do get it. I'm just not okay with hating my life for the next 50 years. Like, why am I the weird one?
How many times have you thought about quitting your job and starting a new life? Hey, I'm Lindsay, the girl who actually did that. And now I'm on a mission to change the 9-to-5 narrative that dreading Monday and working for the weekend is normal and acceptable. My goal is to help you see your potential beyond your credentials, gain clarity on what it means to live life on your own terms, and build the confidence to go after your dream career. I'm here to prove to you that it's possible for you to do work you love, make a positive impact on the world, make even more money than you're making right now, and live a deeply fulfilling life. So let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful, beautiful friend. You are not even ready for today's episode. You're not even ready because today you are getting an interview between me and Chloe Elise, millennial money coach. I mean, if you don't have Chloe in your life, what are you even doing? Like, she is the type of person who just having her in your life will immediately force you to up level. So she is a millennial money coach. She will help you with all things debt, savings, getting ahead with money. And she is also someone who used to work in the corporate world and then quit her job to go all in on her business. So this was just an amazing conversation, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. We talk about all things entrepreneurship, overcoming the fear and the self-doubt when you're first starting out, and all of the shit that comes up. If you listen to last week's episode, then you know that I am hosting a free challenge to help you overcome all of that stuff. So the imposter syndrome, your money mindset, fear of judgment, fear of what other people are going to think. What if my parents don't support me? All of the mental drama, we're going to fix in my free challenge that starts on March 23rd. So if you haven't joined that yet and you are someone who is dreaming of working for yourself someday, click the link in the show notes or go to lindsayhanson.com/challenge to join before we start on the 23rd. Chloe and I also dive into some of the more practical, tactical, financial planning steps that you're going to want to take if you are someone who wants to work for yourself someday. And it is just an amazing conversation that you're not going to want to miss. So make sure as you're listening to take a screenshot, post it up on your Insta story, tag me at Lindsay M. Hanson, and tag Chloe at deeper_than_money. Also, make sure you listen all the way to the end because I have a super, super special offer for you guys that Chloe is letting me gift to you guys that is just absolutely freaking unbelievable, and you won't want to miss it. By the way, I know that my audio is a little bit weird when I'm doing these interviews, and I realized it in my interview with Paulina. I was like, why does my voice sound so like muffled? And so I thought that if I used my mic on this interview, it wouldn't sound muffled, but it still does. So we're going to figure that shit out. But you know what? I'm here to be an example of done is better than perfect. Start before you're ready. Start before you have everything figured out. And that's exactly what I did with this podcast. Okay, I have no idea how to start a podcast. I know next to nothing about audio and how all of this shit works. So we're learning as we go, and we're hitting publish anyways because the content is what matters, okay? And someday we're all going to listen back to my first few podcast interviews and laugh at them, all right? And it's going to be a great time. So thanks for coming along for the ride as I learn this podcasting life. And enjoy my weird, janky audio, okay?
Tell me a little bit more about, well, tell the people who don't know you a little bit more about who you are and kind of your background. I know you used to work in a corporate job, and then last year, I believe, you quit to go full-time in your business. So I would love to learn more. I don't actually know. I think I started following you after you had already quit your job. So I didn't actually know like what you were doing before and all of that stuff. So I love to learn more about that.
Absolutely. So my name is Chloe, and I'm a millennial money coach. And this all really started for me. I was just a very normal college kid working a ton of part-time jobs with absolutely nothing to show for it. And over, I would have these mental breakdowns in college, and I would like cry and be so dramatic, which if you know me, I'm kind of dramatic always, but this was like the peak of my being dramatic. I would like cry and be like, I can't go to the party tonight because I have to work, like just super over the top. And this would happen over and over because not only was I mad that I was missing the party or missing the birthday dinner, I was mad because I was missing it to go to work, and then I had nothing to show for it. So that kind of stacked up over and over until I reached my breaking point. And I was like, I have to figure out this whole finance thing. I had it. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. So I started going through and trying to learn finance for millennials. And I was like, there's nothing out there. I was Googling stuff and I was reading like why you should have a credit card, but it was written by the credit card company. And I was like, is this true? Because it's written by them. And then I was reading these books and they were talking about how to save for your kids' college fund and how should you refinance a mortgage. And I'm like, I'm 19. I'm like, I don't care about that. I want to know how to not spend $50 drunk after the bars on pizza. I'm like, I want to know money tips for me. And I struggled. I really struggled finding things that were fun and easy and worked for me, and struggled for a long time. And I just started piecing together processes and learning things on my own and making mistakes and whatever. And I finally found a process that worked for me. Ended up paying off all my debt, paid off $36,000 in 18 months, partially while in college. And during this same time, I was in college for 6 months of that. And then I also graduated, got a corporate job, and did project coordination, project management. Really liked it. But while I was doing this, I kind of had this sneak peek into entrepreneurship. And I was like, what's going on? And I had this epiphany where a lot of my friends were being like my closest friends who knew that I was paying off debt. They would say, hey, can you show me how to do this? I'm like, sure. So we would sit down and I would show them, and it was working. The process that worked for me, I was replicating and showing other people how to do it. And at that same point, I'm in corporate, and I started having very similar breakdowns while in corporate. While I liked my corporate job, I can remember this so vividly. It was Thanksgiving, or it was between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I was looking ahead for Christmas break, for Christmas time, to see how many days I would have off to go home. And because I was new, it was my first year in corporate, I realized that the only days that I would get would be Christmas and New Year's Eve. And so, and the way it happened, like New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve was on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and Christmas Day was on a Monday. So we got the Friday before and the Monday after or something. But I was going to have to be back at work on Tuesday, and I was going to miss all of like the stuff I usually do. I go out to the parking lot and I sit in my car and I call my mom and I'm crying. And I'm like, Mom, like, there's no breaks. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, there's no breaks. I'm just going to work in a corporate job forever and until I retire. Like, what is this? And I was like, so confused. I was so shocked because I got to this point where I was like, sweet, I paid off debt. I want to travel in my 20s. I want to live it up. And I was like, but I have no time off. Like, what the hell? And that was a huge tipping point for me where I was like, I gotta take a peek into this entrepreneurship. So it's kind of like two things building up at once that like led to me being like, I want to quit my corporate job and be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that is amazing. And the part about like not having enough time off, like it physically, I get like a pit in my stomach when I think about that. And I'm like,
yes,
because I literally, I was in busy season in 2018 when my niece was born. And so I was working and living in Boston, and they were down here in North Carolina where I am now, but I couldn't come down here when my niece was born. And that like destroyed me. It like was the worst. And I was like, and even now that I am an entrepreneur and I don't have to like, I don't have limited days off. I don't have to ask anyone to take time off. But even when I'm planning a trip, like I'm planning a trip home this month, and then I'll be trying to make plans with my friends who have corporate jobs, and they're like, well, I can't take any days off. Like I don't have any PTO. And I'm like, God damn it. Like I forgot how miserable that is. But it's so like sad to me to think about having to literally plan your life around a job, especially when it's a job that you don't even fucking like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you're going to a job you hate every day, and then you can't even live your life because you feel like you have to go to this job, and you like don't have the time off to go visit your family on the holidays or go visit your family when your niece is born. And it's like the saddest thing ever to me.
Yeah. Another big thing for me is I worked at a little branch of this company. So it was a big corporation, but we had like a smaller team. And in my smaller team, so at this point I started literally 5 days after I graduated college. It was crazy. And so I like moved in 5 days and started that Monday. And then, and so anyway, so I was 21, and the next closest person to me in age was almost 40, late 30s. And so there's a huge gap, and which, I was fine with whatever, but a lot of my friends at work, my closest friends were in their 50s. Like, we would go out to happy hour and people would be like, oh, they'd be like, ma'am. And then they'd be like, and for your daughter? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm their daughter. It's like, what? But anyway, so I'm hanging out with these 50-year-olds who had been there. Most of them had been there since like they'd been there 20, 30 years. And their constant language around work was, all right, another Monday. Oh, like, oh, it's almost Friday. Like, oh, well, just got to get through the week. Hopefully I have vacation coming up. And I just remember being like, I was such my natural personality is very bubbly, but I choose to be positive. There are days where I'm like, screwed today, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to have a good day. Like I choose that. And so I would say like, great day to have, good day to have a good day. And people would be like, oh, she's so naive. She's so naive. Like, oh, she's so sweet. She doesn't get it. And I'm like, no, I do get it. I'm just not okay with hating my life for the next 50 years. Like, why am I the weird one? How am I the weird one? All of you are calling me naive for wanting to have a good day every day of the week and like love my life. That always was just like, am I being punked? Like, how do you guys not get this? How am I the weird one? I'm like still shocked about that. Never get over it.
This is why I love you, because yeah, that's how I felt too. There was and it was weird because I went into it feeling that way. Like I remember I literally did not look forward to my first day of work. I was like dreading it because I was like, I felt like I was walking into like the end of my life. And looking back, I'm like, that should have been a red flag.
But here's the thing. It's not a red flag when that's how everyone around you talks to.
Right. And like, especially like for me, my mom always worked in jobs that she hated and would like come home and complain about work. Mm-hmm. So it was just so normal to me to like hate your job. But then once I was actually in it, I just had a moment where I was like, wait, if I keep doing this, this is going to be the rest of my life. Like, fuck that. No, I can't do this for the rest of my life.
Exactly. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I was just going to say, I had a similar moment to you about the birth of your niece with my sister's wedding. So this is, a couple, like a year plus later, 2 years later, actually. And my sister gets engaged. She's getting married. And I am like, so it was to the point where we had the same PTO and sick day. So if you were sick, it took up a PTO day. I would be like on my deathbed and I would be like, no way I'm missing a day because that means I can't go home for Christmas. I would be like physically in pain sitting up and I would be like, I'm clocking in. I'm getting here. I cannot give up a PTO day because they were so precious to me. And anyway, so my sister gets engaged. She picks her wedding date. And the first thing I do, kid you not, the first thing I do, I'm like, well, I have enough PTO to take a couple days off then. And I figured out I would, but then I would miss my family vacation. So it was one or the other. Which one did I want to do? And I remember at that point going home and writing in my journal, this will not happen again. I'm not going to live my life like this. I'm not going to. And for me, as a high achiever, even when I had days that I was on PTO, I would check my email and I would feel so guilty for missing work. Or if I left early, I would feel bad. I would feel like a failure. I'd feel like whatever. And so it wasn't just like, oh, when I left, I was like so clocked out. I could really like create space. It was still a lot for me. And again, I created a lot of that, but that was just where I was at. And so I wrote down like, that will never be me. Like, this is not going to be my life. And so that day I wrote down a question that literally changed my life. I wrote down, how can I quit my job by June 8th? I wrote that down on the top of a piece of paper. I wrote, how can I quit my job by June 8th? Because that would give me enough time to put my 2 weeks and then have the whole week off for my sister's wedding and then be able to, be a full-time entrepreneur. And I wrote that on a piece of paper. And I just remember looking at it. And my first thought was, yeah, right. Like, that will absolutely never happen. And I was just like, no, block that thought out. How could it happen? Hypothetically, how could that happen? And so I just started brainstorming, like, how could that happen? What would that look like? What are the things I needed to figure out about insurance or about what would I need to match for my salary? What did I need to have in savings? Like, all of these questions, I just started asking them. And for me, at least, that's where I see so many people having a huge gap, is because they assume it's not possible. They never ask themselves that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So backing up even a little bit further than that, how did you get to a point where, number one, you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur? I guess you already went over that a little bit, but also, how did you decide that you were going to turn this like passion of yours for helping people get ahead with money, turn that into a business and into your full-time job?
Yeah, great question. So for the entrepreneur question, I feel like I am an entrepreneur like by blood. Like, from when I was little, this is such the most embarrassing story of my life. But when I was little, I did all the normal things too. Like, I did lemonade stands and like that stuff, garage sales, but I would also collect bugs and then knock on my neighbor's door and tell them that they could pay me. And I would tell them what types of beetles were in my bug catcher. Like, what the hell was wrong with me? I don't know, but I would do that. And when I found out that I could convince someone to give me money by providing a service or by providing lemonade, I was like hooked. So then growing up, all of my jobs until my corporate job, every single one of my jobs was like an independent contractor job. Like, I nannied all of high school. I mean, I was a full-time nanny during the summer. I would work 50 hours a week as a nanny when I was freaking 16 years old, because I was like addicted to making money and making money by myself. I worked at a concession stand at the fairgrounds. I would teach swimming lessons from she did private swimming lessons. In college, I worked in the mailroom. I worked as a couple hours and picked up lunch for these guys at this trading commodities firm. I did tutoring. I did like everything I could do that I could be my own boss, I would. And I loved it. And then that's, again, that contrast of then going to corporate and having to like report to someone, having to be there specific hours, having to do that. I was like, even though I liked what I was doing at corporate, that feeling, I was like, oh my gosh. Like I felt like I was being suffocated. I was like, I need to be my own boss. And so then, of course, at the same time, I am, having this money journey. I'm showing my friends, whatever. And it happened so naturally. Like I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I decided I made a post that, I was holding a sign. I'm like, I'm debt free. I paid off all this debt. And I kid you not, before I posted that, I decided I was a money coach. And I don't want to sound like, I also on the back end, while I was learning finances myself and knew I wanted to teach people, I went and got the certifications. I went and did all this stuff. So it's not like I was like, oh, I'm a money coach. I'm qualified to do this. Like I went and like earned it. But also, it doesn't matter. So many people struggle for so long and think, oh, I need one more certification. I need one more qualification. I need one more thing. And it's like, there's a point at which you have to decide. Yes, you need to be qualified to be giving that advice, in my opinion. I don't, just because I paid off debt, I don't think that alone makes me qualified to go and teach this stuff. But so yes, that's important, being certified and all that stuff. But at a certain point, you have to decide, like you have to choose that that's it. So I, got the certifications, whatever. And when the morning I made this post, I changed my Instagram bio to Chloe Elise, Millennial Money Coach, and then made my thing like, I help millennials pay off debt. I think that was it. And then I wrote, book a call with me, book a free call, like a free consultation call or something. And then made a link, made a down arrow, made a link where they could book a call with me, like on Calendly or something. That's it. I had nothing set up. I had no idea what I was going to offer. Made a post that was like, I'm debt free. A whole thing. I'm like, I paid off all this debt while I was in college and while I was this and yada, yada, yada. The last line was, do you want to know how? Book a call with me. Link in my whatever. I had so many people reach out. And they're like, it's so cool. You're a money coach and yada, yada. And I remember being on these calls and being like, these people really think I'm a money coach. This is crazy, which I was a money coach and I was qualified and I was that. But to hear people also say that, I was like, this is crazy. This is so cool. It was so surreal that I had decided that. I stepped up to the plate. I did that. And then people agreed. I was like, what? And because, as a new entrepreneur, all you can think about is the girl from high school who's going to talk shit about you in group chat, and the people who knew you in college as terrible with money, and your parents who don't want you to quit your stable job. And like, that's who you think of. And so to get on a call with someone who's like, hey, I want help. Like, how can you help me? I was like, wait, you believe in me? Like, what? This is crazy. So I started offering basically what all entrepreneurs do in the beginning. Let me rephrase that. What all entrepreneurs do who have no clue what they're doing and don't have a good coach. Because I was like, I'll help you for $2 a month. Like I had no clue. I had no clue. And of course I struggled in the beginning because I would have people who came in who they were paying so little that then they wouldn't do their homework. They wouldn't show up for the calls. And I'm like, why aren't these people caring? And it's because I wasn't charging enough. I wasn't charging to where they had skin in the game. I was basically running free challenges, but calling it one-on-one coaching. And so that's kind of, where I started to struggle in the beginning, but slowly but surely I kind of found that, and as an entrepreneur, you never really find it. You just like morph into it and then it keeps working. Then you change things and it keeps working. And so slowly but surely I kept getting, more one-on-one clients who they were showing up and they were doing the results because they had skin in the game. They were paying for it and they were paying a good price instead of nothing. And I just started getting social proof. I was saying, hey, not only did I do this for myself, I helped her do it and I helped him do it and I helped this couple do it and all of this stuff. And the biggest thing is I just started showing up and giving value. I wanted to be known as the money girl. I wanted to be known as that. And in order to do that, I had to give value. I had to keep talking about it over and over and over. And so that's what I did. And it's crazy to me to see how much this has evolved. And for those of you listening, like I used to literally Google how to be an entrepreneur, or like find a podcast that was like how to, quit my job and be an entrepreneur. I had no clue. I was just Googling stuff left and right. and I would listen to interviews like this. I would listen to podcasts. I'd be like, oh, it's easy for her. It's easy for her. Because it just seems so far out. And if you're listening to this, I want you guys to know I started my business in August of 2018. And if you're listening to this in real time, it's like a year and a half later, not even a year and a half. Today's my half birthday, actually, by the way, just so you know. You didn't wish me happy birthday. You didn't wish me a happy half birthday because you don't care about me that much. But if you want to know, it is my half birthday. But so less than a year and a half ago, like so many people, I just assumed as I was listening to calls like this when I was in that place, oh, well, they've been doing that for 50 years. And it's like, this is a year and a half ago, if that, where I was this lost girl who knew I was made for more. I would go to work and I would be like, yes, this work is okay, but I am made for more. And I knew that in the depths of my heart, and I tried to ignore it. And I tried to just like make the best of it. And that's great to do to some extent. But there's a point at which, like, I'm reading this book and it talks about this. And for me, I have to know if you relate to this, because for me, I was like, oh my God. It talks about how you get this like inkling about entrepreneurship, but then the entrepreneurship bug bites you. And once it bites you, you hate your job. Like once it bites you, for me, when I decided I want to be an entrepreneur, when I wrote that down, I made that decision, instantly I dreaded going to work. It was so weird because when I decided I was made for more and I believed that truth that I could go and do something else, instantly I was like, well, then why am I here? Why am I here? I'm made for more. I believe it. Let's go.
Yeah, no, it changes the game. And it was weird because in one way I was happier going to work after I made that choice because I could like see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, I know I'm quitting my job soon. So I like wasn't as miserable, but then it was also like, I remember after I like knew I was going to quit my job, I remember sitting in meetings and just being like, I can't even muster up the energy to pretend that I care right now. Like I could not. I was like, the amount I don't give a fuck about taxes, I just can't even pretend that I care what these people are talking about. I would literally be sitting at work and I would have because I was studying to get certified as a personal trainer, I would like have my study materials up on my monitors. Like if you walked by, you would see like the freaking like picture of the human body and all the muscles are labeled. I'm like, I literally stopped caring about anything. I gave no fucks at all once I made that decision. And I was like, I know this is happening. It was like before I put in my 2 weeks, but I like knew I was going to be quitting soon. And I just was like, yeah, I can't even pretend to care about my job anymore. So I'm just going to study for my personal training exam while I'm here.
It's so hard when you decide. It's difficult. It's difficult. So hard.
Yeah. Okay. So much good stuff that you just said that I want to go back to. But yeah, the imposter syndrome is real, like always, whenever you start in entrepreneurship. And I remember having a moment, imposters, like the imposter syndrome, like who am I to like be a coach, definitely came up when I started because I jumped into fitness coaching having like no prior experience in fitness, like at all. I had never trained anyone. And then I launched my program fully online and I got 5 clients in my first month. And I was like, is this allowed? Like, what is going on? But then again, when I switched from fitness coaching to life coaching, and it was just like, it literally was just me deciding, like nothing changed. I didn't like have any other certifications or like education. I just literally decided I'm a life coach now. And the way that I felt, honestly, I'm assuming you watched The Office. Do you watch The Office?
Of course.
Okay, good. I literally felt like Pam when she just decided she was the office administrator and then just like convinced them to pay her as if she was the office administrator. And then she just was. I was like, that's what my life is now.
Yeah.
I just decide that I want to change my career and then that's what I am. Like that's what it feels like.
Exactly. It is. It absolutely is. And it's like your life changes when you make decisions, because every time when you make a decision, if I decide, and like this is so funny because This just happened the other night, but we were like, okay, should we go to the dog park, or should we, take our dog, or should we go to the store? Like, what should we do? And, you're just in that like wishy-washy. And so we're just like watching a movie and we're like, should we even move? And then I kid you not, Shay, my fiance, wait, how funny is this? My fiance, because his name's Shay. Somebody told me to call him that. I'm like, that's funny. I'm never calling him anything else.
I saw that on your story and I was shocked.
I was like, fiance, incredible. But he just like jumps up and he's like, we're going to the dog park. Let's go. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's go. Like, it sounds so goofy, but when you sit in the like lingering stage when you're like, I hate my job, but I don't know what to do, but nothing happens. You're just sitting there watching a show that you don't really care about, but then you're like, oh, you're not going to the store, and then you're not doing this, and nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. You're just sitting in that stage. And it was so funny because Shay decided that, and then we went to the dog park and we had a great time. It was so nice out. It was so wonderful. And here's the thing, we could have easily stayed on the couch and not done either. Easily, just by no one deciding. And so it's that simple for big decisions too. And I think there's this like, I don't know, mysterious thing of like, oh, that only works for small decisions, but for big decisions, it's like, no, it doesn't. It's the exact same. You have to decide, because when you decide, everything changes.
Yeah, that's the moment where the magic happens. But yeah, the imposter syndrome, the like fear of what people from high school are gonna think when you're posting on Instagram, and like what are your parents gonna think, and also what to charge, like all of that stuff. Funny enough, I literally just announced a challenge today that I'm launching this month, which is like all of that stuff, called Drop the Mental Drama Sis, and it's like the imposter syndrome, fear of judgment, the like all the money mindset shit of like, first of all, people like assuming that they'll make less money if they do something that they love, or worrying that if they jump and they start their own business, they won't make a lot of money. But then also like the other side of money of like charging people and selling your services and not undercharging and undervaluing yourself, and like all of the mental shit that comes up with that. So
that's amazing. Wow. If you're listening to this, if you're listening to this and you're not in the challenge, what are you doing?
lindsayhanson.com/challenge. Just saying.
Just saying, go join that challenge yesterday, because it's
okay. So I'm also curious. So was this something that you were like building it up, and then you had a plan in place of like, I know you wanted to quit your job by June 8th.
Yeah.
Was it like, did you make a clear plan of like how you were going to make that happen and where you wanted to be financially in your business? Or like, were you like building up a side hustle, or was it just like quit your job and start your business on June 8th?
Yeah, it was definitely a mixture. And the reason I say that is from a logistical perspective, or from a like business finance perspective, I had clear numbers that I decided, and then I talked to my accountant about, and then I talked to my financial advisor about, and was like, from an unbiased perspective, what do you think my business would need to be bringing in for me to quit my job? Okay, so I had those conversations and kind of had that number in place of like, I need to be hitting X amount per month to feel really good about where I'm at. At this point, I had paid off all my debt because I was like the catalyst in this journey. So I didn't have debt. My living expenses were pretty low. And so I figured out what I would need to make per month, and kind of figured out of, okay, do I want that to be in one-on-ones? Do I want that to be in my group program, the Wealth Accelerator? Like, how do I want that to be? And I figured out, okay, for me, it was like my big focus was on my Wealth Accelerator program, because I'd ran it and it was super successful. I just wanted to grow it. And so I was like, okay, how many people would I need to get into that program to where I would lock in X amount for the next 3 months or for the next 4 months or whatever? And then I said, and I had like all these people, my business coach, my accountant, my financial advisor, Shay, my fiance, they were all like, all right, if you do that from a, numbers perspective only, we feel good about it. So that was kind of step one, was like matching, like hitting the number I wanted to hit for at least 3 months. Okay. Not forever. I just knew for 3 months. The next thing, you know, obviously from a personal finance perspective, I paid off my debt. And I was really working on, at this point, I had finished my emergency fund, my big emergency fund. So that felt really good, of like, you know, worst case scenario, I have that kind of backup savings. So that I felt really good about that. And then also just like some odds and ends stuff, like talking to, you know, I got set up with long-term disability insurance and a couple other things, figured out like what would I do for healthcare and all of that stuff. Like some of the logistical questions, like those were big, of like, what do I not know that I even don't know, you know, those sort of questions. But then also like, here's what people don't understand. Two big things that I learned from them. One, there will always be another corporate job you can go back to. Like people think of this fear. They have the fear of like, what if I fail? And it's like, I got to the point where I was like, well, if I, you know, fail, if my business fails, I would go back to a corporate job and I'd be in the same place. What would be so wrong with that? What would be horrible about that? On my resume, would it say I quit because I, you know, just wanted to like chill? No, it would say I quit because I'm business minded. I had a dream. I wanted to follow it. I'm ambitious. Like in an interview, I knew that I could play that to where it was like, hey, I really enjoyed corporate. I left on good terms and I went for a big dream and now I'm coming back. And like, so I knew that what was worst case scenario? Like I talked a lot of times in our heads, we just think, oh my God, fear, worst case scenario. But then when we talk it out, I got to the place where I was like, all right, Chloe, if worst case scenario happens, I'm okay with that. Like that is fine. The risk of me taking, I'm still fine with it. So that was one of the big things I learned. The second thing I learned is no matter how prepared you are, it's still a huge leap. It is still a huge leap into entrepreneurship. One, because it's out of our societal norm. Like that's not what normal, that's not the normal career path. And number two, because you are now, yes, you get all this freedom, but now you're the one that sets your schedule. You're the one that makes the money. You're the one that does all this stuff. And so it was like such a big change where it was, I thought I had the expectation that if I was debt free and if I had this and I had this, it would be not scary at all. And it was so scary. It ended up being so easy because I'd set myself up and because I was all in and all of this stuff. However, it was still scary. And a lot of people the reason they don't do it is because of the fear. And if that's where you're at, you're just going to stay stuck.
Yeah, 100%. I actually remember I had a call with a girl one time and she was talking about like, you know, what if I started my business and it failed and then I could go back and get a corporate job. But she was like, but then I would have like a gap in my resume. And I was like, a gap? It's not a gap. You didn't quit your job and then do nothing for a year and a half. You quit your job to start your own freaking business. Like that's literal business experience. It's the most business experience you're going to have.
I know.
Like, but like, no, you started a business. That's like the definition of business experience.
Yeah. Don't be scared to put CEO on your resume, sis. Like, come on.
Literally. Yeah. Which I think at the end of the day comes down to that like imposter syndrome again of like feeling like, who am I to do this? I'm not like a business owner, but it's like, you're the one who gets to decide to step into that role.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you have to own that. And a huge tip for anyone, I should have mentioned this when I was talking about my, like how I transitioned. If you would have, and this is a mistake. And again, I don't want to say mistake because I have no regrets. Everything turned out so perfectly. But looking back, what I would recommend to someone else, if you would have asked me 3 days before I quit my job, 3 days before I put my 2 weeks, we were at like a networking event or a coffee shop and you came up to me and you're a random stranger and you're like, oh, what's your name? And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm Chloe. I would say I'm Chloe. I am a project manager at blank. I would not say I'm a business owner. I would not say I'm a project manager. And I would just say that. Why? Because I knew I would get massive praise for that job. And I knew that I would get questions and doubt if I said my other job. And I didn't want that. And so I wouldn't say it. I wanted the praise. I wanted people to be like, oh, and for your audience, oh, I'm an accountant, like, oh my gosh, you're an accountant. And so people want that praise. And so we're more willing to do that. And it was even to the point where Shay, my fiance again, he would say, Chloe, tell him about DTM. Tell him about Deeper Than Money. And I'd be like, oh, I have this like little business. I was like, oh, I just have this like silly little thing. And that's how we show up so much. And it was like, no, I don't have this silly little thing. I run a freaking business. And that's a decision. Like at that point, that silly little thing was a registered business, same as Target. Like we have to treat our own businesses like freaking businesses from day one, because it was such a weird experience for me when I did quit. I remember the day I was a full-time entrepreneur, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like walking out into my apartment, like my office. I'm like, whoa. And I remember like the whole day, whatever. And then like that week or something, I was out, or I don't even know, but someone's like, oh, what do you do? And I froze because it was the first time that I had to say, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I have a business, or I work at my own company. Like I was frozen because it was the first time I ever had to say that. And it felt so, I was so nervous to own it. And so one thing that you can start doing if you do have a side hustle is to own it and start treating it like a business, because that is going to make your transition and also make prepping for that transition so much easier. And it's going to help you be all in for it instead of doubting yourself.
Yes. Oh my God. I have to tell this story. I don't think I've told this story before because I don't really think about it that much, but that was a huge thing for me when I first started and people would ask me what I do. For a long time, I would still say that I was an accountant. I would basically just pretend that I still worked where I used to work, because I was like, they're not going to understand what I do. But like the truth is, I just wasn't fully owning what I was doing. And then again, when I switched into life coaching, it was like, I don't want to have to explain to people like what I do. So I would like make it so complicated. I would be like, well, I'm like kind of a career coach, like not fully owning what I was doing. But one time I remember I was at the airport and I just was like waiting for my plane to board, and the guy next to me asked what I was doing. I forget when this was. I don't know how long it was after I quit, but I like had fully quit my job at this point. I was like 100% I was still a fitness coach at the time. And we had like a whole conversation, and I just told him that I was an accountant, and we were like talking about where I used to work, because it's like a well-known, it's one of the big 4 accounting firms. So he like knew the place, and we were talking about it. We had like a full 30-minute conversation. And then I was like, why the hell did I tell that guy I still work there? Like, it was hilarious, but I was like, why did I just fully pretend that I still work at this fucking job?
Exactly. No, I get that on such a deep level, because it's almost like, your ego wants to step in and say, oh no, tell him that, because then he'll get me and he'll validate me and all this stuff. Whereas we have to rewrite that story of, no, I don't need that outside validation to be a business, to be successful, to have this, to do this. And, I had this fear for so long, whereas now so often it mimics my response. Like in the beginning when I would say, oh, well, I kind of like do this like coaching thing with like money, people's responses were like, what do you mean? So like this, or like how's that a job? Whereas now when I'm like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I do, people are like, oh, cool. Wow, that's so cool. And so you have to set the stage for how people respond to it almost. And, if they're going to respond poorly, even when you own it, that's on them, not on you.
Yeah, 100%. So let's get into the logistics a little bit, bring out the money coach of tips that you have for people who want to quit their job, want to go into entrepreneurship and work for themselves. Like, how do you plan for that financially?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, ideally, I would absolutely recommend, if possible, being debt-free, or at least having your, if you have credit cards, paying those down or paying those off, ideally. It's not the only way to do it, but it will be so much less of a stressor when making that transition. Having an emergency fund, having some savings in case, especially in the beginning, if you have a lower month or a medium month, not having to stress about it, knowing that you are covered no matter what is a huge blessing. The other thing, this one isn't so much financial, but I didn't say this earlier, and maybe I did, but it's just so important to point out. I had a coach. I hired my business coach. When, I hired a business coach, I was making less than $1,000 a month, and well less than $1,000 a month in my business. And I paid $10,000 paid in full to hire a business coach for, a couple months, whatever. And I did that before I quit. And so many people, I will hear these stories from people who are like, oh, well, I'm going to wait until after I transition. And I'm like, you really don't think that in one of the biggest transitions of your life, you won't need a coach? Like, what? And in that transition, it was so, again, because I'd set up the finances, it wasn't stressful for me money-wise. It was stressful for me emotionally. The transition was just so huge and so overwhelming a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If I wouldn't have had a coach, I would have just, that spiral that you were talking about earlier of like, oh my gosh, can I really do this and all this stuff? I can vividly remember I would message her and I'd be like, frantic, like, oh my gosh, what about this? And she would just respond back and be like, stop. Why are we throwing a pity party? Like, you're a CEO, stop acting like a second grader. And I'd be like, whoa. And it would just, I sometimes joke that I pay her to bully me, my coach. But it was I needed that so much. I needed it so much because my thought spiral never led to me quitting or me giving up or me stopping. Or if anything, it led to me powering through in the biggest transition of my life. And so it's so crazy. So many people will say, oh, well, once I do this, or like, oh, wait. And it's like, when you are going through stuff, that is when you need a coach. When you are the most busy, that's when you need a coach. When you have the most going on, that's when you need a coach. And it got to the point where there were minimum of days during the week I wouldn't reach out to her, or even a week when I wouldn't. But when you need her, when you need someone, having someone there to talk you down or just work through things is everything. And so that was just huge for me. And the reason I say that, I know you asked about finances, that impacted my finances probably more than anything else. Huge for me. The other thing is just planning ahead financially. Like, I knew, okay, I had to have this many clients to lock in this amount of money. But then more than that, I know if I make this amount of money, what are my expenses? I had to know that. I had to understand my business expenses. And then what would I pay in taxes per month? Okay, am I setting taxes aside? Like, knowing all of those pieces was huge. And I think so often people will think, oh, the number stuff is overwhelming. And it's like, no, knowing the numbers allows you to stay in your creative zone of genius. It allows you to not be frantic to make money, but to step back and say, okay, cool. Everything's taken care of. I just need to go and create. I just need to go and serve. I just need to go show up and help my people, support my clients. So that's the biggest thing, is just knowing where you're at and being realistic and facing that stuff, because that allows you to show up fully as a coach, to show up fully for your people.
Yeah, love it. So what would you say to someone who wants to quit their job or wants to start their own business, but they feel like they're stuck because they have tons of debt, like tons of student loan debt, and they feel like they can't quit their job or do something that potentially would make less money because they have so much debt to pay off?
I would say hire Lindsay. But actually hire Lindsay. But then also, I would say have a plan for it. That's the biggest thing. When debt is from that example, and I hear that all the time, a lot of times it's not even the financial aspect of debt, it's the emotional. Because if you are an entrepreneur, in the beginning, you're a solopreneur. So you are the one on the sales calls. You're the ones pitching people. You're the ones doing the one doing all that stuff. So if you are feeling terrified about money and overwhelmed in debt and feel like you're drowning, and then you get on a sales call where right before you're like, if I don't close this, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. On that sales call, you are going to be in such frantic energy. You're going to be so focused on the sale. You're going to be so focused on the money that you're going to forget that you're talking to a human whose life that you can change, whose life that you can impact. And, you know, you don't want that. You didn't go into entrepreneurship just for money. You went into it to change lives. And so that's the biggest thing. If we can come back to a place and say, all right, what's my plan for this debt? How much do I want to, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, I have to, you know, I have debt, so I need to wait to quit. Okay, cool. What day are you going to quit then? Okay, if you wanted to quit in June, let's move it back to July 31st, but give me a new date. Like, people are like, I have debt, so I can't. I'm like, no, push it out a little bit, but give me a date. Give me a date, and let's start working towards it. As an entrepreneur or someone who's going to be an entrepreneur, I will often give them different advice than someone in corporate. Because for someone in corporate who is paying off debt, for the most part, unless they're in like sales or a commission-based job, their paychecks are the same. So I can say, here's when you're going to be debt-free. Here's when you're going to do this. Don't go and, you know, spend out of alignment because it will impact your timeline. For an entrepreneur, it's not an expense, it's an investment. And so let's say an entrepreneur has more debt, but instead of paying off those student loans right away, they invest in a coach and go from making $0 a month to $10,000. And then they're able to pay that student loan, you know, 10 times faster than they would have before. So it's not just about the numbers. It's about having a plan and then choosing which plan makes the most sense. Is it the plan where I quit earlier, but then there's a little bit more stress with loans? Is it a plan where I actually stay at my job 3 more months so I can pay off $5,000 more of debt and then I feel better about quitting? That's okay. But for you to use debt as people use it twofold. It's like, oh my God, it's so stressful. I hate it. I'm so overwhelmed. And then they also let it negatively impact their dreams by saying, well, because I have the debt, now I have to wait. Now I can't do this. Now. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You need to start making moves now to when you have that plan in place and you have that debt paid off and it's time to get going, you're ready. Because if you're just focused on that debt and you're not building something in the meantime or figuring out what you want to build, you're going to get to that, you know, July 31st, and maybe you'll have paid off debt, but you won't have anything to leave to go and do.
I freaking love that answer. Yeah. And I love that you brought it back to like the emotion of it, because I really believe that 99% of the time, maybe 100% of the time, it's not actually about the money. Like, it's not actually about the debt. It's about your fears. Like, the money is just logistics. The money is just a math equation. If you are, you know, letting debt be the reason why you're not going after your dreams, it's not because of the debt, it's because you're scared. And debt is that manifestation of that fear. It's an easy out for you to be like, oh, I can't do that right now, I have debt. But really, you're just terrified because it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be scary even if you had zero debt.
Exactly. And don't use debt as a crutch to not move toward your dreams.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So tell me about your program. Tell me about how you help people and who you help.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I love helping my millennials. And I do that in a couple different ways, but my signature program is called Wealth Accelerator. And it is my 3-month, 90-day group coaching program to help millennials who are making good money with nothing to show for it. Especially for your audience, for people who hate their jobs. What is worse than going to a job that you hate to make money and then opening your bank account and realizing you have nothing to show for it? What's the point of going to that job you hate, you know? And so that's who I help. I help people who are feeling like that start creating massive wealth, building wealth and all of that stuff. So the Wealth Accelerator, that's my bread and butter. That's my signature program. But then I also have a couple other things that serve millennials who are maybe in a couple different places. But I also have a ton of free resources. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I am struggling with money, but I don't know where to start, I have a couple amazing free challenges that can definitely help you where you're at too.
All right, cool. So tell the people where they can find you.
Of course. I am Deeper Than Money on all social media. So I have the Deeper Than Money podcast. I have a free Facebook group called Deeper Than Money where I do free trainings every single week on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central. We have Instagram's probably my favorite place to hang out. But we have all of them, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all the goods. But if you have any questions, or I love when people tag me in episodes too. So tag me at deeper_than_money on Instagram. Because I love hearing your thoughts too. Come hang out with me.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
You're like the first person. Literally once before I started a podcast, I was like, one day Chloe's going to be on my podcast. I didn't even have a podcast yet.
I love that so much. I love listening to this podcast because your energy is 100. Always.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that.
I hope y'all are fired up. I love Chloe. I freaking love her. I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation and that I was able to have her on the podcast because she is just such an inspiring, high vibe, amazing human. So if you're not already connected with her and following her on all the things, make sure you check out her podcast, the Deeper Than Money podcast. Find her on Instagram. I'm going to link all of her stuff below. And drumroll please, special offer time. I am leaving a link in the show notes where you can apply to her Wealth Accelerator program. And if you apply through my link, you will get 20% off your enrollment in the Wealth Accelerator, which is freaking bananas. So you're welcome. Thank you, Chloe. And go and apply, girlfriend. Like, I'm telling you, I would not ever be advocating for someone or be an affiliate of someone if I didn't 1,000,000% believe in their program, in their service, in them as a person. And I have personally worked with Chloe myself, and that's why I know that she's the absolute shit, okay? So do yourself and your finances and your future self a favor and go apply for the Wealth Accelerator. She already has people enrolled in the next round and on the wait list. So, like, get on that shit, girlfriend. Like, you are not going to want to wait. Also, don't forget, it is free challenge o'clock. If you are someone who is dreaming of quitting your 9-to-5 and working for yourself someday, and if you resonated with any of the mental drama that me and Chloe talked about, the imposter syndrome, the fear of judgment, the self-doubt, the money stuff, all of it, I am going to be helping you overcome all of that shit in my free 5-day challenge that starts on March 23rd so that you can launch your biz with confidence. So the link is in the show notes to enroll in the free challenge, or you can go to lindsayhanson.com/challenge. I'm so glad that you tuned in today, and I always appreciate you tuning in. I love you, and I hope you have an amazing week.